It was Sunday afternoon, and my mother did not approve of golf on Sunday, but she didn't have too much to say when I played. And I had gone out to Northwood, very exclusive club, cost $4.95 a month to be a member.
Saves time.
And I had just pulled up. I had the radio on. They broke off the music to announce the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So I didn't do anything, turn the engine back on, turn around and go home.
My mother wanted to see the airplanes come in. It was a Sunday afternoon, and we were driving out Stewart Avenue long before the expressway system was developed, and we were going out to watch the planes. In those days, you could sit on a bank and look down and watch the planes come in.
That was called Candler Field, right?
Yeah, Candler Field. After dark, it was populated by couples that were excited about each other. And in the daytime, the more adult-like people came and watched planes come in. So she wanted to watch planes come in, and it's always good to humor your parents. And I was humoring and taken out there. And usually on Sunday afternoon, I'd get with a bunch of boys and go call on the different girls. But that's what I did on that day.
Well, did you hear about it over the car radio or something?
Car radio.
What was your first reaction to that? Do you remember?
Well, it was a shock.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced. The attack also was made on all naval and military activities on the principal island of Oahu. We take you now to Washington.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Having dinner on Sunday at home after church. A friend of mine had come over to see me, and he was sitting out in the sun parlor listening to the radio, and my family was having dinner, and he came in and he said, where is Pearl Harbor? And I didn't know. My father knew. And then he said, well, the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor.
So we were sent to go and hit the same power plant. And as it turned out, again, we missed our proper landfall, and we're kind of groping around for a few minutes over Holland, and and two of our ships collided, went down into a canal, and I think the rest of them were all hit. We were hit, and one of our engines was on fire.
Were you hit by flak or by?
Yeah, by flak.
Firecracker?
No, by flak. You know, they could shoot at you with a rifle when you were down on the deck. See. And what happened really was that on our way over, one of our guys aborted. And he jumped up to about 1,000 feet, and we felt later that when he did that, their radar caught us.
You said up to 1,000 feet. What were you flying at? What altitude?
Oh, 50 feet, just as low as you could fly. As I've often said, you could see I exaggerate a little bit, you could see the wake of the plane ahead of you in the ocean. No, you flew really, as I say, as low as you could fly. We got, and as it turned out, every ship went down. Nobody got back. When we hit the coast going back out, the other engine was on fire, and that's when we ditched. And a funny thing about it is I was flying co-pilot on that flight too, because the plane that I had been assigned was damaged in that first run that they had, and so we had somebody else's plane for our crew.
So you ditched in the Channel,
No, in the North Sea.
the North Sea?
Yeah.
Oh, you up north of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I started to say they had fire extinguishers for the engines, but the cable to it was behind my seat, the co-pilot seat, and I had to unhook my safety belt to get to it. Well, it didn't work anyhow, but I never refastened my safety belt, and that's probably what saved my life. Because right before we hit, I'd opened the top hatches, and we hit maybe at 150 miles an hour. The ship went down pretty quickly. When I came to, I was underwater, caught on something, and I finally kicked loose and came up and pulled my Mae West plug. But all the rest of the crew drowned. I was the only survivor in that ship. Yeah.
On the base, so did you have some contact with air crews from time to time?
Oh, sure.
Contact?
Sure, and one of the things that troublesome, we had a movie set up, but they had only one projector, and you know, a long-term film has to shift reels. Well, they couldn't shift to the next projector, so they had to let the lights come up and change the reel when they ran out of the first reel. And I looked over and I saw a kid, and I swear I knew him. And when he turned around, my gosh, it was a fellow named Johnny Adams from Darlington, I went to school with. So we went over and chatted. And Johnny was on Captain Skogmo's crew, which was one of the outstanding crews, I think, in the 8th Air Force. And he got killed. He got shot down.
Did you all, were you all aware when some of your group went on a mission and
Oh, all the time. That's what the whole operation was for. And you'd see them leave in the morning. Took forever to get up to altitude, and then all the groups that had to assemble that were going. And then it was wait and wait. And when you knew they were due back, you began to get concerned, and before long you'd see some coming. And brother, it was quite a sight. You worried a little when you saw a red flare pop out of one or two of them, because that meant they had wounded aboard, and they got to land first. And that was the drama of the whole thing. That's the only reason we were there, was to send them out and bring them back, or get them back and get ready to go again.
I'll tell you a little bit first about Leyte. We were on the beach at Leyte after, maybe 5 or 6 days after the initial invasion. We beached to unload supplies and equipment. We had a deck load of 55-gallon drums of aviation gasoline, which is pretty volatile stuff, I understand. And there was a kamikaze attack during that time, and one of the pilots took aim at us, missed us by about 20 feet, and crashed into the beach ahead of us. And we were lucky then, because that aviation gasoline would have incinerated the whole ship, no doubt.
Did you ever know what kind of aircraft that was? It was flying. It was a Zero?
It was a Zero, yeah. Actually, after the attack was over, our engine room machinist got out and recovered parts of it, took pieces of the propeller that they found, sliced it up into small sections, and I have a small section of propeller that I use as a paperweight.
Eventually we got in the airplane, and we would, most of the training for a bombardier was in the, we trained on B-24s. That's the reason I have the little B-24 on my lapel today, is the only combat type plane I flew in during the war. But we were trained in 4-engine B-24s, and mainly in to operate the nose turret. It was made by the Emerson Company. It was electrically operated twin 50 caliber machine guns. And I can remember when we were on a flight and I'd be sitting in the turret, you're so far ahead of the engines in the cockpit, you wonder if you were up there alone. Every once in a while I'd swivel the turret around to make sure somebody was there with me. And it was kind of an interesting experience and fun experience for an 19-year-old kid, you know. I think I was 19 by then. And but you train on those guns, and you'd also train on you trained on every other gun station in the airplane. You had a waist gun, which was on a swivel, just stuck out to what we call a waist window on each side. And you trained on the tail gun, and you didn't train on the ball turret underneath unless you were a midget, because you couldn't get in it. But we trained that we're supposed to be capable of using all those weapons. We did things like we flew at altitude, so to give you an idea of that, and we wore the fleece-lined jackets and caps and gloves. And even at altitudes we flew, could get very cold. There was no heat on a B-24 on any military aircraft, as far as I know. But we would go up. I can remember one of the things we had to do was learn to field strip our machine guns in case they jammed blindfolded, so you could do it in the air at night if you had to do it. And I remember trying to field strip it. Occasionally I'd take the glove off because I couldn't get my fingers right, and it'd stick to that cold steel. That's how cold it could get at something 18,000, 20,000 feet.
I have got a picture here on the ground simulating a lineup with three guys there. You're sitting along the plane on each side in what we call bucket seats, just metal indentation. When you're approaching the DZ or drop zone, the jump master lets you know you're approaching. And the first command is stand up and hook up. So the trooper stands up, the static line is around his arm, he anchors it on the anchor line, and then the next one is check equipment. The man behind each trooper checks his equipment to make sure that the pack has not come unstitched with the weight sitting in the plane. In other words, it's intact. And the last man then turns around and the one in front of him checks it. Then the jump master's next command is sound off for equipment check. Then you start. Number 1, okay. Number 2, okay. Number 3, okay. And right down the line. Then, are you ready? Everybody screams, ready. Stand in the door. The first man then stands in the door. The jump master as we approach, ready? Ho! He hits the man on the leg, the lead man goes out, and everybody follows in a mass jump.
Citation when you
Let me let you read that. I don't like to be.
Well, I know you don't.
I don't like to be pushing that myself.
I know you don't, but I want to.
We'll get on to something after the war other than that.
Okay, well, I want to read it. You don't mind if I read it?
Well, that's you. That's up to you.
I'm reading, for the record here, the citation given by the President of the United States of America when they awarded Judge Dan Wynn the Distinguished Flying Cross. It's very short. Citation: for heroism and extraordinary achievement in aerial flight as pilot of a fighter plane in Marine Fighter Squadron 534 during operations against enemy Japanese forces in the Mariana Islands area from 3 January to 2 June 1945. Completing his 20th mission during this period, First Lieutenant Wynn contributed materially to the success of his squadron and the infliction of damage on the enemy. His courage and devotion to duty in the face of enemy fire were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. For the President, Francis P. Matthews, Secretary of the Navy.
I was given an interpreter to go with me. Spoke Japanese.
Where were you going?
I was going to Japan.
Okay.
But I was going by way of Okinawa.
Right.
And this time I flew up in a C-54.
Now, this was before the official surrender, though.
Oh,
right?
hell yeah,
Okay,
this was,
that's important.
this is about, this is about 2 weeks before the surrender that I go to Okinawa. And we sat around in Okinawa and day or two and saw the Japanese plane come down. So I go back through Okinawa on the way to Japan, and we expected to go any moment, but we waited another week or so, not a week or so. It was 6 days before the surrender that we went. And I say we, I was in a C-54 with a Jeep. There was some elements of the 101 or some airborne division and a full colonel and some major or something in there. He had a Jeep also. I think there were 2 Jeeps in that plane and some other stuff. And then there were 3 or 4 other planes that came in, and we were sent to a place called Atsugi. And Atsugi turns out to be where these kamikaze pilots were trained.
Is that on the main island of Japan?
On the main island, approximately 50 miles from Tokyo, and about 20 or 30 from Yokohama. And
it was the Japanese aerodrome where you landed, right?
we landed when the Japanese were told that we were coming in. I mean, that was apparently the place that the Japanese suggested we come in. And the Japanese also had been ordered to clear Yokohama, where the surrender was to occur basically in the bay there at Yokohama. And they were to clear that area. And when we rode we spent the night in a barracks that was in sort of the shape of an H with a latrine between, and I don't know, a couple of hundred kamikaze guys over here, and less than 50 of us on the other side. There's restroom in between. You didn't want to go there very much.
How were you feeling about that? Were you scared?
Oh, hell yeah, I was.
And then the Japanese, emissaries, we picked up in a destroyer and brought them out to our starboard side. And then we sent the admiral's barge over to their destroyer to pick them up. There were about a dozen of them, headed by the prime minister at the time, who was Shigemitsu, and he was a peg leg. And we had the ladder over the side, but they had to come up the steps of the ladder. And he did real well.
That peg leg, you mean he had one wooden leg?
One wooden leg, yeah. It wasn't a hidden prosthesis, it was a peg, like you could imagine. But what I had done is, in picking side boys, I had picked the 8 side boys, 4 on each side, who were all 6 feet tall or more. I looked for basketball players or whatever. Really just to emphasize the superiority of our forces. And the Japanese came through, went up to the surrender deck, which was just abaft the quarter deck where they came aboard. And there, MacArthur and Nimitz sent them down for the surrender. If I can refer a minute to a picture that I've had, and I've had a lot of fun with it over the years, but this shows the picture of the beginning of the surrender, and shows the picture of them coming aboard, and you can see myself there, Starnes, and you can see Halsey, and you can see Nimitz.
Is that you on the left-hand side as I look at the picture with the
Yeah, right there.
Right there. Okay.
So I've always said that Starnes and Halsey and Nimitz really brought this thing to a conclusion successfully.
The best one was when we had the shooting in the library. And that was the fun one. We had this guy who was an actor from the undergraduate school. He was a fairly small fella, and he came over to the library, and he accused me pretty loudly of messing with his wife. And so, of course, I backed off and all that stuff, and finally he pulled out. I also
remember while you're telling this that I was an eyewitness to this. So
yes, you were an eyewitness. That's right. So I had reached in my pocket and pulled out a knife again, and I was getting ready to cut him, and this guy pulled out a gun and shot 2 shots, exactly 2 shots, and I fell back like I was hit, and I had put red ink inside my palms. And when I fell back, my palms fell open. Well, I did this, you know, and then I fell open. And everybody in the place thought I was dead. And we had this big old Marine, and I've lost his name now, but he
Bob
was...
Edwards.
Yeah, Bob Edwards. He was big. He grabbed that little fella, and he said, "You killed Bowtie! You killed Bowtie!" And he'd like to beat the devil out of that boy. I'm telling you, he'd like to kill him. But at any rate, what the fun part was that just after it happened, Dr. Quillian, who was one of our favorite professors, quite old, came out from the stacks. We didn't know he was in there. We tried to make sure that none of the professors were anywhere around. He came out from behind the stacks, and so as soon as they carried me out, I got busy and came back in there and apologized to him. I said, "Dr. Quillian, I wouldn't have had this happen for anything in the world, and I apologize to you." He said, "Apologize nothing, Bentley." He said, "I'm going to be a witness."
I had a Crosley automobile, which you may remember. And one...
Tell us about the little Crosley.
Yeah, that was something. We had been to Moe's and Joe's one night, and of course had been drinking. And as we pulled onto Fraternity Row, the campus police came in behind us. So I said, "Okay, everybody in the back seat." So all 4 of us were in the back seat. And the campus police came and looked in the window and said, "Who's the driver?" Nobody said a word. He said, "I'll find out who the driver was." Nobody said a word. So he says, "Well, y'all be careful." So he drove off. Well, we sat there for about 30 minutes before any of us moved. Then we all got out. We left the Crosley on the side of the road and walked back to the Chi Phi house. And I picked it up 2 days later.